Um, can you tell me about Reggie and Tupac's relationship when Pac was on death row? Anything you saw with them?
It was friendly, of course. You know what I mean. Reggie was, of course, he was in charge of all the security. So he was a busy person, you know. He was around. Reggie used to always be close to Suge, you know what I mean. I think Reggie was actually Suge's personal security, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, Reggie had people that was working with his, working for a security company, and he would put security on Snoop or Pac and stuff like that. So it was always a respectful, mutual relationship between Pac and Reggie. He never said nothing bad about Reggie. He always spoke with him and smiled, and it was a respect. It was always a respect.
Okay, because Yasmin Fula put out a document where Tupac had faxed Reggie in near the end of August, saying that Tupac no longer wanted his security services. So there's a guy out there, the same guy who claims that Tupac wasn't on death row, that says, this is proof that,
Yes.
Reggie was fired and that Tupac didn't have any security on him afterwards. The week before Tupac went to Vegas, after New York, but before
Yes.
Vegas, do you remember him having security on him, whether it be, recording studio or at the house or any kind of thing like that?
I think up until he passed away, he still had security for certain events. You know what I mean? Like going to the studio. I know from the time that Pac went to death row, there's a lot of times he didn't want security around him. He just was the type of person, he wanted to have his freedom, and sometimes purposely he would dip and try to get away from the security. You know what I mean? But I think up until he passed away, if I'm not mistaken, because you got to think about it, when the day that Pac got shot, some of the Outlawz was in a car behind him with one of the security who was supposed to be, telling Pac, who's supposed to be behind Pac. You know what I mean? So they was in a car with one of the security who was put to, be the bodyguard for Pac on that specific night. You know what I mean?
Okay. And I think that particular bodyguard was Frank, who had just came back from
It was Frank.
And he had
Frank.
just come back from like a 5-week vacation or something like that. So I guess what I wanted to make sure was
Yes.
that the security that Pac had on him
Excuse me.
before Vegas was other security other than Frank.
I believe so, definitely. I know Hacky. I remember the name like yesterday. Hacky was one of them who was always around with Pac, and then Frank was the main one.
Can you tell me about as much detail as you can about this? And I don't know how much you remember, but the last studio session with Tupac, the songs that were recorded, we know now from the masters being at the museum at the Wake Me When I'm Free exhibit, All Out, Hell for a Hustler, and then the Tyson song that Tyson walked out to, the night Tupac was shot. You're on both the songs, All Out and
Yes.
Hell for a Hustler. Can you tell me a detailed account of that last studio session and everything that went on, since it kind of was the last time that Tupac was able to record?
I just, I remember not vividly. I believe it was at a studio. It wasn't Can-Am. It was with the guy, what's his name, Damon Thomas
Mhm.
Thompson. He was a new producer that came around, and Pac liked the beats, and he went in there. And I remember Pac was just on one, even he was just like writing, and it was very intense. I remember the whole session was very intense. These last studio session, you know what I mean? He was like really, really, really on one. Very like his lyrics was more militant, that day. And I just remember we went in the studio, knocked it out, but I don't remember vividly, because you got to understand, back then I was a heavy, I was always intoxicated, you know what I mean? So a lot of stuff I don't recall, but I do remember it being a different studio than Can-Am, and I remember Pac, he seemed like he really wanted to get some stuff off his chest.
Okay. All right. Can you talk about when there was, I want to say altercation, but there was a situation where you brought Bone and you brought Flipside from OFTB and a bunch of guys up to meet with Suge. Can you explain and go into full detail about that story?
Yeah, that happened when Suge came home from jail. you know, the Outlawz, we wanted to separate from Suge. We wanted to be able to, you know what I mean, from the standpoint of view that we put a record together with Suge, and they never released it. So we figure, you know, I think we probably was on death row for 3-4 years without releasing the record. So we wanted to go our separate ways, and Suge didn't give us the release for him, you know. So I think Edie was in the studio at first. They was working on some Pac album that was also part of a death row deal that they was releasing. And so when we got word that Suge was up there, we went, you know, Bone, he's always been like a big brother to us. Flip Side from OFTB, he came up there with us. My brothers, my cousin, a bunch of dudes from Jersey. Because we know how, you know, it can go anywhere. It can go anyway when it come with dealing with Suge back in those days. So we really wanted to speak with him and make sure that we had some people in line with us that, you know, that Suge also respect. You know, he, back in the day, of course, and even from the street standpoint of view, he respected Bone, he respected Flip Side. They was all bloods, you know what I mean? So we figured everybody coming together and probably can discuss like men or whatever, how we can get off the, you know what I mean, off the record label. And I remember I had a gun on me. You know, I remember I went up there with my gun, and some of the homies from Jersey, my brothers, we was all strapped because we know Death Row was wild back in the day. So we don't know what, you know, I think a couple months before that, Edie said he ran into Suge one day when he first came home, and Suge was like, "You guys owe us money." So we didn't really know what was going to happen. But, you know, I always been the type of person, if there's a situation, you know, let's try to address it like men, you know. So we figured let's go up there and speak with Suge. And Bone, you know, and Flip Side, they wanted to come with us, you know what I mean? But when we got up there, I think we seen Buttrey, we seen like a few other, you know, people that, and it was good to see these. Trey, I think, was up there. So it was good. Reggie, I think, all of them was up there. So it was good for me to see all these familiar faces, you know what I mean? And I actually, and when it came to that, when that day, I remember I was the one that asked Suge, "Can I speak to you?" So me and Suge, we sat at a table, because this studio, they had some tables outside, and I was telling Suge, like, you know, we want to get released from the record label, and Suge was like, "But you guys owe us money, you owe me money." And I was just straight up like a man. I said, "I don't feel like we owe you anything." He's like, "Man, I did this album on you guys, I rented this house for you guys, I paid a bunch of money." And I was like, "With an album, you had the chance to release it, you never released it. The house, you know, we were just a bunch of young kids, so of course we destroyed the house, but I still don't feel we owe you any money." And I remember Suge's exact words. I'm going to twist it a little bit because I don't want to, you know, offend no race. But he was like, "It's okay, I'm going to get it from the white folks." I guess he meant Interschool Records.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about when you guys were going to get off of Death Row and Suge was still locked up at this time? I believe you reached out to Reggie and had him take you to Suge. Can you tell me that story?
We decided to get off Death Row with the group, the Outlawz. We hired a lawyer, and they was going to send a letter to Death Row, you know, saying, "Look, the Outlawz want to get off. Actually, we're going to also sue Death Row." And I kind of felt like, because we had a relationship with Suge, so I kind of felt like just to send a letter is kind of the coward way to go about it. So I told the Outlawz, I said, "Man, let me go see him face to face and just tell him face to face we want to get off. If he don't let us off, then we have a right to go get a lawyer." So I hit up Reggie, and he drove me, I think it was St. Louis, Obispo, like one of these beautiful towns in California, you know what I mean? I think I might have went up there a couple times with Reg, but he drove me up there, and I was able to see Suge, and I told Suge we want to get off the label, and Suge, exact words was like, "You know, I ain't withholding nobody who don't want to be down. No problem, I'm gonna let you get off the label." But he never released us, you know what I mean? So eventually we had to hire a lawyer. We settled out of court. You know, we ain't get no money. We just wanted to walk away.
Okay. I wanted to get into some stuff that you don't speak on a lot. I don't think you get asked about it a lot. But I wanted to talk about the Dramacidal album a little bit. So with this album, it was an album that I believe you guys worked on when Tupac was in jail after the quad shootings thing. And there was one song in particular that you performed on the album, but it was written by Tupac, and it was a song called "Interview with a Problem Child." Can you speak on that track and how that came about with Pac writing it?
Well, basically, Dramacidal was a group that, you know, consists of myself, Edie, Castro, And at first Gaddafi was in a group, but then, I think he went back to Jersey, and Pac wanted to continue with the album. So we did a deal with Interscope, where Pac sent us out to California, my first time going to California. And Pac was in prison when we started to record this album. So the song "Interview with a Problem Child," Pac wrote it for me because he wanted this song to be very just from my background, coming from the streets of New Jersey, coming from the hood. And Pac used to say that you had this problem. I was like a problem child, you know what I mean, where I had this innocent looking face, and that's what Pac used to say, you look innocent but you wild. So I wanted to write this song for you. So it was something that he did, and he wanted to do an interview, a video, where it's like the lady interviewing me, or the man interviewing me, and do a video. But of course we was never able to release that album, because soon after he signed to Death Row Records.
Okay. And then another song on that album is a song that you guys had with Tupac called Late Night. I think the first version is one that Stretch produced. Is it true that after Tupac was in jail after the quad shooting, that he asked you guys, any song that Stretch produced or did anything with, I want you guys to go and get it remixed? And then so for Late Night, Mosey ended up remixing it. Is that part true?
I believe that's true. I do know, I can't really speak like, the exact songs that he made us remix, but everybody know that when Pac came home from jail, when he got shot while he was in jail, him and Stretch went their separate ways. So of course, the business that he was dealing with Stretch before getting locked up, he didn't want nothing to do with it. He cut all ties with Stretch.
Okay. And I believe that album was advertised to come out on Interscope / Out the Gutter Records, which was Pac's label. I wanted to ask you, did you ever hear Tupac discuss or bring up Out the Gutter Records after he got out of jail and was with Death Row?
No. After Pac got out of jail and went to Death Row, the only record label or record that I heard him speak about was either he was going to do Euthanasia Records under Death Row or Machiavelli. I get confused which one it was. You know what I mean? I believe it was Euthanasia Records. So he was going to do a distribution deal with Death Row, Euthanasia Records, and the first artist was going to be the Outlawz. But I think he stopped dealing with the Out the Gutter, from the time that he came home.
Okay, because the only reason I asked that is because there's somebody who claims that Tupac was never really signed to Death Row Records, that he was still on Out the Gutter, and that Suge was just his manager. So I didn't know if you had any insights into that.
No, it did. That sounded like a strange statement, because how are you going to release an album on a record label if you're not signed? You know what I mean? You got to get permission to release any songs that you're on. You got to even have, people don't know, when you're in a recording studio, we used to sign the splits. Automatically, the splits have the record labels coming out on, the splits have, the producer, the writers, and we used to have them around the studio. Everybody was signing them. Pac was signing off the splits, so that doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay. Can you tell me the story about when you snatched the mic from Puffy during the rehearsal of I don't know if it was if it was an award show or if it was a tribute show, but can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, that show was for the MTV Awards, where basically MTV wanted to do a tribute concert during the awards for a tribute show where Tretch had he had a tribute that he did for Pac, so Tretch was going to sing a song for Pac, and Puffy and Faith Evans had a song that they did for Biggie. I was against it. Steve Lobel, of course, he was trying to advance our career, teach us that, look, you guys got to be more diplomatic. You can't always say you beefing with this person and that person. This is what's going to open up doors for you guys. And the Outlawz wanted to do it. We went out to New York. Big Syke was there as well. But I always been against it. I said, bro, I don't want to be on stage with Puffy. Pac died, and I'm liking this dude, and I just don't want to do it. So they kept, they was like, nah, we got to do it. So we went to rehearsal, and my intention was, I'm gonna wait till it's a live show, and I'm gonna snatch the mic from Puffy. But I was intoxicated. I didn't really know if it was a live show or rehearsal. I just seen bright lights, you know what I mean? And Puffy came next to me, and I just snatched the mic from him. He tried to grab the mic back. I pushed him. The security guard rushed me. The Outlawz got in the middle, and they basically kicked us out, you know what I mean? And I remember that day everybody being upset with me. The Outlawz, Run DMC was there. You know, they was kind of upset. Shakim is a person. He's a managed Queen Latifah. I grew up with Shakim, and he came to me, and Shakim was like, "Moo, why did you do that? Puffy want to talk to you." And they took me to some stairs, like behind the stairs. Big G came with me, but they didn't want anybody else to come with me. So I went in a small room, and Puffy was there with all his homies, like security. Like, it was a small room, but he had at least 4 or 5 people with him, and just me and G went in there, and Shakim was there. And Puffy was like, "Why did you do that, Playboy?" And I was like, "Man, you know why I did it, bro. Let's not go there." And he was like, I'm tired of this stuff. I'm moving to Europe, and this and this and that. And nothing came out of it. We left the room, you know what I mean? And we was pretty much blackballed from that day on, where you snatched the mic from Puffy. But for me, you know, I did what I had to do. I just didn't feel comfortable, you know, performing with Puff Daddy. You know, it probably would have been good for our careers. It probably would have opened up doors for us, but I just couldn't do it, you know?
Okay. Can you tell me about in 1998, I think it was early 98, what your reaction to was when you started to see all the songs hit the streets, as far as the Machiavelli bootlegs and all the music kind of starting to flood out and get out into like the swap meets and, you know, eventually the internet. But what was your reaction when all that started?
That was crazy, because it seemed like nobody knew where the music was coming from or how did it got leaked, you know what I mean? I remember at that, I was back in Jersey, back and forth going from LA to Jersey, and everybody at that particular time had some songs leaked from Machiavelli or some of the pop songs, and nobody knew where it was coming from. So it definitely was weird, you know, where nobody could have put their fingers on it, who leaked it. It was crazy, you know?
Can you tell me a little bit about, I know we talked about the song that Tupac had written for you, the interview of a problem child earlier, but he also did another,
yes.
Like he had also written another verse that you ended up recording, and he recorded it, but you know, used it on the retail version. Can you talk about You Can Be Touched?
Yeah, You Can Be Touched, actually, Pac wrote that. He actually wrote it and also recorded it himself. And one day he came to me and he was like, "Moo, this song, these lyrics sound like something you should be saying." Because it started off saying that, you know, I didn't have my parents and, you know, like growing up in a struggle. So Pac was like, it just sounded like something you should be saying, you know what I mean? And he's like going there. And, you know, back in the day, for a rapper to have someone else write their songs, it was kind of looked down on, you know what I mean? Even though it's Pac, I didn't want him to write my songs, you know what I mean? But he was the big bro. He had the vision. So he said, "This sounds like something you should be saying, so I want you to do it." So that's how I got on that song. You know, I went in there and did his lyrics, and it just fit the song, and we kept it, you know?
Okay.
And we didn't want to change it. I think even after Inner School wanted to, you know, go back and put the original songs on it. But that's when everybody, the Outlawz, was like, "No, Pac wanted Moo to do this specifically, and that's why Moo was already on the song, so let's not change it."
Okay. And going back to the Still I Rise album, a couple of questions on that one. Number one, can you tell me about going in and doing new verses for the songs? Because this was obviously after the bootlegs hit. But also the removal of Fatal. People always want to know what the logic and what the reasoning was for Fatal's verses being taken off.
Fatal verses got taken off because, you know, at the end, unfortunately, Pac wasn't really, you know, he loved Fatal, but it was some separation, you know what I mean? And I don't want to go into details because Fatal not here to defend himself. So Fatal kind of, you know, he went his separate ways before Pac passed away at the end, you know what I mean? After the New York, he never came back and things like that. So he kind of went his separate ways. So we decided, and if I'm not mistaken, I think even Pac wanted to remove him from some of the songs, you know what I mean? And I'm sure it would have worked itself out because we was all like family, even up until he passed away. But he never came back to LA. He didn't want to sign to Death Row. He wanted to do a solo album, so we went and did our thing, and he did his thing. You know what I mean? School him.
Okay. And then can you give me any stories or memories of Tupac's Calabasas house? I remember going to check out where the house was, and it was like these crazy windy roads going up the hill to where it was like one way traffic pretty much, because there was always cars parked on the side of the street, so only like one car could fit through, but they were really windy and really wavy. And I remember thinking, if it were nighttime, or if I had been drinking, I don't know how I would get up and down to get to this house. Can you tell me any memories about the house and being there with Pac?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely was one of them in Calabasas, like you said. It was going up the hill. It was very, small streets, and he's very tucked away. You know what I mean? I remember when he first moved into the house, he was loving it. You know what I mean? Had a pool in the backyard. Nice neighborhood. Calabasas is one of the best, neighborhoods in LA County. So Pac, I think when he got to that point, it was like he made it. He was living in the mansion, and it was definitely a dope, situation where, it was different for us. Even for me, coming from New Jersey, they used to have a neighborhood watch. So I remember one specific time and the guys from New York for the, One Nation album, some of them were staying in the house. And I remember because Pac taught us, like, he had us like rappers, but always on point. We watching who comes, we looking at people's hands. He had us like that, you know what I mean? So one time I remember his backyard where the pool is, you can look down it's a street going down, you know what I mean? To like another street with homes. And there was a car that just parked and just sat there. And they didn't get out the car. So Pac had us paranoid thinking that everybody's out to get us. So I remember running to tell Pac, like, Pac, there's a car that just parked across from your house and it's looking up, you know what I mean? I probably exaggerated a little bit. It's looking up at the, I think they stalking us out and they might be up to something. And I remember Pac was like, he had this cabinet with all his guns, opened the cabinet, took out AR-15, AK-47 or something, passed it to one of us, passed it to another one. And I remember Pac ran to the backyard, and he got on the ground like he was in the army. And he raised up like he was about to shoot at the car. And the guy got out. It was like neighborhood watch security for the neighborhood. He's like, no. So I had to realize, like, man, we living in a neighborhood where the neighborhood have security. And I was about to get somebody's head blown off, man. You know what I mean?
J Flex, you guys had an issue with him. I'll word it nicely, but there was a fight where you guys rushed into the studio and fought him and a couple of guys that he was with. This was separate from the Sam Snead thing. Can you go into that story and tell me your side of it and why you guys did, or why it got to the point that it got to?
The Sam Snead thing, I always get it confused. I think even in one of the interviews I mentioned Sam Snead because, back then a lot of stuff wasn't clear. But now it was the guy J Flex. And I just remember Pac, first of all, even listening to his interviews, he seemed like a respectful person. You know what I mean? Now that I'm older, you know what I mean? I would tell a dude that, back then my mindset was different. You know what I mean? Listening to him talk, he seemed like, from his standpoint of view, I kind of felt a little sorry for him after that, you know what I mean? But back then, I just remember Pac coming to me, specifically saying, Moo, these dudes is in the studio, either they down with Sam Snead or they down with Dre or something like that. And when you go in the studio, just do what you got to do. So I went in there and started swinging, you know what I mean? And I think he had some other dude, I think I started fighting one of his homies. And when he tried to jump in it, if I'm not mistaken, Big Psych or somebody grabbed him and probably, started fighting him. So that was one of them things where, anytime Pac tell us to do something, we take off, you know what I mean, automatically. So it was just one of them situations. We don't ask any questions. He was from, at that particular time, someone that we thought was with Sam Snead or Dr. Dre, and, Pac told us to go handle it. So, I went in the studio, we just started fighting, one of his boys. But after listening to him, you know what I mean? Because he started breaking down things in details that we don't even know the details. We don't really know what was happening. We just remember we were just some young, wild dudes who love to fight. We don't care why we fighting or who we fighting. You know, if Pac say fight somebody, we just gonna make it happen. But when you start hearing it from, you know, you get older and you become mature and you realize that, you know, we wish we could have handled it different, because it seemed like these dudes ain't really know what was going on. They had nothing to do with anything. But Death Row was a wild environment at that particular time.
Maybe you can speak on this. When Tupac was in jail before he did the Death Row thing, I'd always heard that different celebrities were trying to get bail money together for Tupac. I actually heard that a couple of people actually did have enough money to get Tupac out. They just didn't have the lawyer legal side of it that could go in and get it taken care of, like a David Kenner. Did you ever hear, number one, about people trying to raise money to get Tupac out? And then if there were people that really did have enough money to get him out, but they just couldn't finagle it legal-wise?
Wow, this is actually the first time I heard something like that. You know what I mean? I can't recall. And also, you know, a lot of stuff, because we was young, the Outlawz, a lot of stuff, even though Pac was young, but there's a lot of stuff he didn't come to us and tell us, you know what I mean? But I don't remember him ever, I don't recall him ever saying that. We used to visit him a lot. Like, weekly, one of us was there visiting him. The only thing that he's talked about openly about him coming home is when he said, I'm signing Death Row, I'm going to be out of jail soon. Only thing I can recall and remember him saying how he's going to come home, but you know what I mean? I didn't even know he had a bail. I just remember him saying, I'm signing to Death Row one day. And we was excited, you know what I mean?
Okay. And when he told you, you know, that he was going to sign with Death Row, obviously, you know, like you just said, you guys were excited. It was probably like the biggest label at the time. But did you guys have any reservations or any thoughts about, man, this is going to be great, or man, I don't know if he should do this? Any feedback like that?
For me, bro, I was already a fan of everything Death Row was doing. I just said, bro, I looked at it from the standpoint of view like this will be dope for Pac. It's a wild environment. It's crazy. I love that type of environment back then. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up listening to West Coast music. I grew up a fan of West Coast music more than East Coast music growing up, because I come from a neighborhood, bro. I was seeing people get shot besides my parents. I was seeing people, I come from the block selling drugs, so I'm seeing people going to jail. I'm seeing people getting killed. I was really around that environment. You know what I mean? So I always felt more connection to rap, West Coast rap, because you got to remember back then, West Coast people was talking about the reality of the streets. You know what I mean? A lot of East Coast rappers came later and start, you know what I mean? You had people like Coogee rapping and was saying and talking about it to an extent, but West Coast rappers was the first time that you can listen to and say, wow, this is sound like what I'm going through. So I kind of figured it was a good move for Pac, especially what he went through with, you know, the people that tried to kill him, and he thought, you know, Bad Boy and them had something to do with it. So I always felt like it was a good business move. I was down with it. I was excited.
Okay. And when the Quad Studio thing happened, obviously, like you just mentioned, Tupac felt that Bad Boy had something to do with it. To this day, do you feel like they had something to do with it? Because I know Snoop did an interview on Drink Champs, and he said, you know, that he's glad that he kind of stood up to Tupac during the beef, because Biggie had nothing to do with setting up Tupac. He said he knows that now. But I want to get your thoughts on, what do you feel today? Do you still feel like Tupac was right, or do you think he got some information a little bit twisted?
I think, to be honest, and people probably, you know what I mean, a lot of people might not agree with it because they want to probably keep the same rumor going. I think, one, you have to remember Pac was young. Two, Pac is not infallible. He make mistakes like everybody else. From what it seemed like, it was more on Jimmy Hitchman. You know what I mean? From what it seemed like, if I'm not mistaken, when the information came out, that it was more Jimmy Hitchman who had something to do with it, not even Haitian Jack. You know what I mean? Like, the crazy part is that everybody thought it was Haitian Jack, and Haitian Jack kept saying that he had nothing to do with it, but it seemed like the robbery and the thing came from Jimmy Henchman. And now, did Puffy probably know it was going to happen? I think maybe so. I think from that standpoint of view, but because Puffy and Jimmy Henchman has always been tight, you know what I mean? But did Biggie know? We don't know, you know what I mean? But I think I think it was more from what it seemed like, and I think it came out, if I'm not mistaken. Some of the people kind of snitched and said Jimmy Henchman is the one who made me do this and do that. So I think it was more from that standpoint of view, you know. Pac was more of upset because, you know, he said, Biggie, if you the king of New York and you in the studio the same day that I get shot, you should be able to have some answers for me. You know what I mean? So I think that's how Pac started really, you know, feeling some type of way. Like, if you the king of New York, you in the studio, you know what's going on, so tell me something. You know what I mean? So that's why Pac really started coming at Biggie, I believe. But God knows best, you know? He knows what really happened.
Okay. And how did Tupac tell you, you know, or how did you get the call? Obviously, it was on the news, but how were you informed by Tupac that, number one, that he was shot and that this is what he felt at the time? Like, you know, what did he say as far as who he thought did it, who was behind it, and how did he word that to you?
Basically, the call came through. I forget what time, but his sister Setchel is the one who answered the call. I was living in the house. We was all living in the house. He had a house in Atlanta, and I was actually living in the house. And the call came to her. I don't know who called her. Matter of fact, it was Pac. You know, it was Pac who called and said that, you know, he got shot. I think he called the mother, then he called the sister. He was okay, and he asked to he put me on the phone. You know, he asked her to put me on the phone, and his exact words was, "You didn't think I'd let them take you away from me you don't think I'll let them take me away from you so soon?" Because I just met him, I just started coming around, and then eventually we went to New York. He was hiding in Jasmine Guy house, and I recall vividly while he was laying on the couch, Stretch came in, and Stretch said that Jimmy Henchman said to you, Pac, you don't have your money right, you don't want to go to war. I remember that. You know what I mean? So even back then, I know he felt like, you know, it was Jimmy Henchman had something to do with it. You know what I mean? So
can you tell me about, Reggie had always heard that there was this thing going on with Tupac where he really didn't want to go back to jail. And that Reggie had even heard that Tupac had a plan to where it was like, if I have to go back to jail, I want one of the Outlawz to, you know, more or less, you know, trying to word it delicately, like, take me out. Did you ever hear him say anything about that?
You know, I never heard him say anything like that, but I think I might have heard, if I'm not mistaken, I know, you know, Edie probably gonna hit me up if it wasn't him, but I think Edie said something like that before. You know what I mean? I do know that Pac, of course, like everybody else, he despised prison. Nobody want to be in prison, especially an individual like Pac. You know what I mean? But I never heard him say that specifically. I think Edie might have heard him, because if I'm not mistaken, Edie, if I'm wrong, forgive me, bro. But I think Edie might have mentioned something like that in one of the interviews, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I do this thing when we do interviews where it's almost like kind of like a roll call, where I'll bring up an artist name or one of the homies that were around and try to get like a brief story or a memory. Yeah, do you mind if we do that?
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm sniffing, man, because I'm catching a cold.
Oh, man,
bro.
no.
So I hope I don't mess.
So the first one is going to be Fatal.
Fatal, you know, that's Gaddafi boy. He grew up in Montclair, which is a different district from the part of New Jersey I'm from. It's more like the suburbs. Fatal was one of the dudes that, when it come to lyrics, he was one of the best, you know, poets. I think after Gaddafi, hands down. I think it was Pac and then Gaddafi, then Fatal. Fatal was a solid dude. You know what I mean? That was Gaddafi homie. Good dude. We had a lot of differences. I think out of anybody in the group, man, Fatal used to always, you know, bump heads. The good thing about it, a couple years ago, right before he passed, we was able to speak a lot. We was able to put our differences aside. And the year he died, he was supposed to come to Dubai. And after years of not seeing him, I was like, man, I'm gonna meet you in Dubai. And unfortunately, of course, he had the car accident and passed away. But Fatal is a authentic dude, good dude. You know what I mean? Good dude.
Okay. Next, can you speak on Gaddafi?
Gaddafi, bro, he was as they call him, the Prince of the Outlaws. Another dude, authentic dude from Montclair, of course, from Gaddafi, from Fatal. Fatal was like Gaddafi big homie. Like Fatal, he was the big homies of all the people in Montclair. You know, Montclair is an area like where I guess the people who wanted to move out of the bad neighborhoods, they moved to the suburbs of Montclair. And I think Fatal was the beginning of the kids going back to the streets, and then Gaddafi and them. So that's why he was young, but he was still considered the big homie for Gaddafi. So Gaddafi is the one who brought Fatal to the Outlawz. But Gaddafi was a smooth cat, you know what I mean? Funny. I think when it come to the pen, he probably was the only one from the Outlawz that get Pac a chase for his money. Authentic, you know what I mean? He was a 100% authentic, solid dude. One of the realest dudes I know, and one of the coolest, one of the flyest. I think out of the Outlawz, he was the best dresser after Pac. He was the flyest, and of course, he was the best lyricist after Pac. You know what I mean? I think even some songs that he made Pac go back in the booth and do another verse, because after Pac hit his verse, he like, oh man, I gotta go back and do something. I can't let my little brother, you know what I mean, outdo me. Gaddafi is also the one who I would say put majority of the Outlawz together. He brought myself to the group. He brought Fatal. Fatal was the one who brought Noble, of course, but Gaddafi was the one who, you know, put everybody together, basically.
Okay. What about Trayvon?
Trey, my homie, bro. Trey, a good dude. You know what I mean? He always been a solid dude, always been respectful towards us. And, you know, he always been, we always click. I think the Outlawz, we click with, you know, out of all, you know, Suge homies or his homies from the mob, Trey was one of the closest to us. You know, he used to come to the house that we had in the valley. I remember when we was in Mexico somewhere on Suge boat, he was freestyling the whole night. Like, Trey was a funny dude, but solid dude. Always been a good dude.
Okay. What about Neckbone?
Neckbone, I don't know Neckbone too much besides, you know, just seeing him around Suge and him. You know, of course, he came around a lot and he hung around a lot. Neckbone was quiet. He was one of them dudes that you could look at and say he's quiet, but don't mess with this dude. You know what I mean? But I can't say he hung out with the Outlawz and us like Trey. Trey used to hang out with us outside of the studio.
Okay. What about Heron?
Heron was my man. You know what I mean? Heron was a dude that up until he passed away, I kicked it with him a lot. You know, I used to go to Compton a lot with Heron, and he used to call us out. He used to call me Outlaw. You know, he'd call me and say, "What's up, Outlaw? You want to go to Compton?" I get in the car and I roll with him to Compton, and you know, we Heron was a solid. He was crazy though. Heron was crazy, but a good dude. I miss Heron.
Yeah. You were actually potentially supposed to be with him the day he passed, correct?
Yeah, the day Heron would pass, because I used to go to, you know, it was a time that I was fascinated with Compton. I used to always be up there with Wack Deuce at his grandmother's house. I would always go with Heron. And on that specific day, I remember he called me because Heron used to, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, live in the valley. So he would say, "Outlaw, what's up? What you doing? Let's go to Compton." I'll park my car and jump into his car, and we would go to Compton. But the day that he passed away, I was supposed to be with him. And my oldest son, Salik, moms was like, "No, you need to come and babysit your son." So I wasn't able to go with him. And unfortunately, a few hours later, I get a call from Wack Deuce. He's like, "Man, Heron just got killed." And I was like, I was shocked, bro. You know, I was shocked.
Okay. Any stories or memories with Buntry?
Buntry was also a good dude, funny dude. Like, he wasn't one of the guys that hung with us, you know what I mean? But when he see us, he spoke. You know, he'd say, "What's up, Moo?" He was always close to he had a lot of respect for Pac. Pac had a lot of respect for him. He was around all the time, you know what I mean, with Suge. He'd come in the studio every once in a while, bump his head, listen to some music. But to say I had a personal relationship with Buntry, nah. But I remember him being a real good dude, you know, very respectful, funny, smiling all the time, you know, at times. And, you know, he was a good solid dude.
Okay. And then last one on our list is Wack Deuce.
Wack Deuce, my brother, even up to this day, you know what I mean? Wack, from the time he came around, you know, even Wack, I took Wack to Jersey, took him to my hood. Like, he used to come kick it with me, stay at my grandmother's house in New Jersey. And I go to Compton all the time and stay and just kick it at his grandmother's house. Wack is a good dude. Even to this day, we're in contact. That's my brother. That's family.
Okay. Reggie wanted me to ask you if you remember a time in the Death Row parking lot that you and him were kind of play fighting, and then it kind of escalated a little bit. I don't know if you remember that story or not, but he told me to ask you about that.
Yeah, I remember that. You know, I think I was mouthing off. I used to always talk crack, like always run my mouth to Reggie, and we started, like, you know what I mean. I think he grabbed me. We started wrestling, and it escalated like it was about to get a little serious. And I believe the rest of the Outlawz stopped it. But I do remember walking away like, damn, he kind of strong, bro. I kind of underestimated Reggie. But Reggie always been my man. Like, I used to always talk crap to Reggie, but that day I guess he didn't want to hear it. So, but it was a good thing. I think we just started wrestling or something like that, and somebody broke it up, you know.